Okay, hello everybody. This is Yichin from OK&Y, and today we're going to be joined by Rob and Eric from Spark of Genius, and unfortunately Oliver from OK&Y to talk about our deck techs. So, in case you guys don't know, we spent a couple weeks prior to Uprising brewing a couple decks and trying to figure out some early builds of each of the heroes. This is largely done with minimal aid from outside. Just wanted to see and test our deck building prowess. And now that we've finished up all of our gameplay videos, we thought we'd do a quick summaries powwow of how the decks changed, and this will lead into our deck techs you can find on our respective channels. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start with Eric, who is on Fai.
Yeah, so Phi, I had some interesting thoughts about kind of like how I wanted to build Phi and probably what I thought the power level of Phi would be. I mean, he is a ninja. Aggro is kind of the most obvious, like some kind of hyper aggro or streamlined, even maybe a bit of a mid range. However, I still think, especially for newer players who maybe haven't played Ninja or haven't played a lot of Uprising period, I think the Draconic Ninja line is a little bit easier to learn like the ins and out of Fai's attack lines, kind of where his strengths are. There is definitely like something to be said about like Kadachi's on like a rupture build or something like that. However, this is the Draconic style build, and so I think pretty much I played into Briar, I played into Iyslander, and I played into Dromai. I think based on kind of the matchups, I think what worked with the deck is I thought like the aggressiveness level was strong. I thought it was similar, probably a little bit wider, a little bit heavier than like Akatsu in comparison. So it wasn't as reliant on like combos necessarily and hitting to Katsu something to like keep your line going or like surging or anything like that. But it was reliant on like Draconic Links, playing your unconditional go again, making sure, because if you didn't have that unconditional go again, you're kind of shit out of luck. Like some of the games where I didn't have it, I had to kind of be a little bit take a bit of a hit in tempo, take a bit of a hit in damage. So what I did like this particular build was it had a fair amount of unconditional that I was able to go decently wide. I think into the Dromai, it was definitely, I mean, other than just like punting at the very end there, I thought it was generally a fairly easy matchup. I don't think I was really. I think if I played correctly, I didn't feel particularly threatened, which was the idea. I didn't think that matchup would go any other way. Currently, I should say, for the builds that we have available, I think the Iyslander was a little bit hit or miss. I think that the number of blues was a little suspect. I probably need to run a little bit more blues. Was running 17. I think the new build is also still running 17. So I didn't change the blue count. However, that remains to be seen whether like Iyslander and Ice decks are super, super prevalent and you really, really care about that frostbite kind of that mitigation. But I didn't end up changing any of the blues for this one. I thought the Briar game was definitely a slapfest. That one was the last one. It was me and Rob.
Right.
It was essentially who goes faster, essentially. Yep. But it's blocking just feels real bad. Like the minute someone's putting you on the blocks, I think it's kind of game over, honestly, at least from the games we've played. Whoever had to start blocking first was in a real bad position. However, bringing in a couple key cards in that matchup did make it a lot easier. So that worked. I think what didn't work was some of the, I guess, ratios as far as like the unconditional go again with like the finishing kind of rupture kind of style, as well as the reaction / buff package. I thought that ratio definitely needed to be tweaked, and I was correct. I had some real awkward hands with like too many random cards that didn't really do anything, and some of the rupture cards that didn't really do anything. And so I tried to tweak that a bit in the V2. I also added some critical armor pieces that I didn't have in V1, namely the stubbies and the flame scale furnace, which I'll talk a little bit about after. I think it definitely did underperform as far as the damage potential, but that's when I compare to the premier aggro decks, mainly Briar. Used to be Chain, not Chain anymore, right? So yeah. Ignoring Chain, Briar is kind of the next thing. Aggro Viscera is still like definitely a thing. It could definitely come back for all I know, right? So compared to like Runeblade being Rosetta level affair is a little bit compared to that. I definitely think that this deck underperformed. I think there is like, magical Christmas lands. You could probably do 30-40 damage with this deck if you hit the nuts of the nuts, right? But I think you're sacrificing a ton of flexibility, and you have to really be quite lucky to get one of those games in. But I thought achieving 20 to 25 damage on one of these turns would be more commonplace than it actually ended up being. I thought a lot of the turns ended up being 10, 15 damage, and I had to stretch a bit off 3-4 cards. And then the 5-card hands were about 20, 25 damage off the right kind of stuff, which is probably fine. It sounds more fair, but like in this particular meta, is that good enough to get over like an Oldhim Control or like a Iyslander or a Briar? I don't know. So I felt a little bit underwhelmed, maybe just because we were coming off Starvo Chain and ridiculous stuff like that. So temper expectations for anyone who's getting into this deck as an aggro player. Think more Katsu. Don't think Runeblade. Think more Katsu. And that should give you more of a real line
realistic
aggro. Yeah, more realistic view on what this deck can do. Yeah. I think as far as the approach of each game going in, so the Briar game was very simple, just slap, right? Just try to go. I think the Briar game I actually preferred going first, just to try to not let them get like a turn one channel, because I just get slapped by like 21 plus easy damage with go against off something like that. So I was trying to mitigate that happening and try to do a little bit of damage, get some chip through, set up a 5-card turn. Probably don't have channel and the nuts, like they might have a blue earth channel 7/7 me, and then I try to come back with a 5-card hand and get tempo. That was the plan. I think that's a fine plan. Going second's probably also okay, unless you get really unlucky. Iyslander, definitely want to go first. Don't want to give them the free arsenal. Doesn't make any sense. I thought that was fine. Getting maximum value off Searing Emberblade is very, very difficult into Iyslander with the Frostbites, but I think it's not even that necessary. I think in the games against Iyslander, I wasn't actually nearly as fatigued as I thought I would be, because I kept having to pitch into the stupid Frostbites, because I kept having to like pitch extra resources all the time. So I wasn't running that low on threats that I thought I would be. So I think that approach is actually could be switched into not having to maximize value off Emberblade, but just playing out, 0 costs and 1 cost. One thing I might change is add more 0 cost go again to this deck, like Ronins and stuff like that. They're just so much easier to get off in a very like ice predominant meta, because it just doesn't cost as much as opposed to the 1 cost and above, right?
Yeah. Are there any like
then,
are there any extra other matchups that you're kind of worried about that you didn't get a chance to test?
Oldhim, scared shitless. Not scared shitless, but I'm just like, I think it could beat Oldhim. I think you just have to set up. You need the right deck, and you need to set up 5-card hands, and you need to hope that they don't disrupt you, because they still have Endless Winter, Spinal Crush, like Frost. They still generate Frostbites. They have a shit ton of armor. They have Stalagmite if they run it. Even Ramparts, Rampart's not that great because you don't tend to not break the chain. Well, if you're breaking the chain a lot, it's like chains. You're probably not doing that great, but Stalagmite. So I think it's very, very tanky. It's difficult. I think Iyslander is going to be difficult. And I think Iyslander, when she's more tuned, will be difficult. I struggled even with untuned Iyslander. It was a very close game. I think a tuned Iyslander would also be tricky. I think it's like the most concerning. I think the mirror is also going to be scary, because it's just if you roll second, you're probably okay, but like things happen, right? Those are the matchups I'd be curious about. Like if you can get Fai and build him that he can 50-50 or slightly above Oldhim, I think you're the top deck, because I think you shit on Prism. Yeah. So the idea is that, well, if Prism's the other top tier deck, and you could probably 50-50 Briar, and you're doing okay into Oldhim, there's not that much else that, like, there's fringe decks. There's like Dory Vis. There are decks that people play that can win. However, Iyslander, yes. I don't think Iyslander will be. I just didn't put her in there because she's not as popular as the other heroes, which people will gravitate towards. People will play Lexi, but Lexi does struggle into Oldhim, does struggle into Prism. Could get more favorable, but like the build that is very good against Fai is the Ice one that doesn't do well into Oldhim or Oldhim or Prism. So I'm thinking more on that line. For that, I think that any major changes to the deck, increased blue count is something I'm thinking about. Maybe 19 or 20 might be the key. It's at 17 currently.
Yeah, what sort of blues are you thinking about running?
I think it'd always be attack actions, honestly, just because even the blue attack actions get buffed from spreading flames. Usually, they get buffed by stubbies, they get buffed by Artivore. I ended up turning like a blue mounting anger into 4 damage off like Stubby's Artivore. Like it's a 1 for 4, even though it was blue. So you can turn in those extra draws from like Tome, Artivore, Mask. You can turn them into 4 power, 5 power attacks. It's possible. Like I've done it. So I think more blue attacks. Actually, the more I think about it, the more I'm probably going to do it after this video. But it makes a whole lot more sense because it's so flexible, and it's not really that intuitive to be like, oh, blue's in a ninja deck, but I don't know, I'm gonna give it a try, right? I think the other major change I would make is probably a slightly lower curve. I'm not sure how at the moment, but I think there's some fluff in the deck that like cards like Rise Up, which are still in the V2. I still haven't found any good use for them. It's kind of like those tuning slots. I think there's about 8 to 10 cards in the deck that could probably be tuned to the meta, and the rest of them are actually pretty good. Like I like the rest of it. Like I liked Belittle, definitely overperformed. The 3 red Belittles and the 1 Luminoism definitely overperformed. The Rise from the Ashes, the 6 Rises, super good.
Yeah.
Very very good. I think those definitely overperformed. I liked Razors. The rest of the deck was fairly cohesive. I think the Flame Scale was overperformed a little in the mirror and into aggro. So the Flame Scale Furnace, giving that 3 block over the course of the game. And Stubbies did what I thought Stubbies would, is add about 4 or 5 damage in the game, which is very very good.
How often were you using the Flamescale Furnace ability for value?
I wasn't. I could have used it in one game I played where I drew the 4 reds, and so I would have pitched to play a 1 cost and then pitched again another red for the furnace and turned that red into a yellow, right? I think that's your best case scenario. And I think with that 2 resources, I would have played Engulfing Flame Wave, which costs 2. But I don't have that many cost 2s, so I could have maybe swung the sword or something like that. I think there are use cases, and I think it does help when you all red, which in this deck you will all red. It is a red line. It's a red base deck.
I think on hands that you draw like at least 1 blue, you're very unlikely to use the Flame Scale Furnace because you're not going to pitch reds to keep the blue ever, I think.
No.
So, like you said, get out of jail free maybe once or twice a game. Might outperform Tunic if you can't get to that like 2 count or 6 counters, I guess, on Tunic to get the 2 resources.
6 turns, yeah.
6 turns.
Exactly. 6 turns, assuming you use the tuning after 3, right? Like
Exactly.
You might not.
So 6+.
But the 3 armor is just so good into aggro. It's just armor is armor, right? And I think in a combination, if you're playing into like Guardian or anyone who can CNC you, having Mass Shuko Flamescale block for 6, like that's how often can Ninja do that? Ninja could never do that before. So I think for a deck with that high a power level to have 6 block available to it, you're in Runeblade territory. You're getting close to Runeblade territory, boys. You're not Runeblade yet. It's wannabe Runeblade. Let's be real about this. This video is in purple. It's still Runeblade land. So
true.
I think
this is why Oliver chose the colors, because he loves Runeblade so much.
No, I
don't. It makes a whole lot of sense. But I think like general like thoughts about the deck and performance. I thought it performed about as well as I thought, given the more realistic, tempered, no pun intended, expectation on what Ninja can do. And people who have like, oh, but I've done 40 damage off like 20 cards. I'm like, I'm sure you can. I'm sure it's possible, but like, I'm looking at consistency. I'm thinking if you run this deck at Pro Tour, I don't know if it'll happen, but let's say you run this thing at Pro Tour. I have to think at the highest competitive level, tier 3, tier 4 events. You have to think about you're running this thing in like 14 rounds of Swiss on a CC Pro Tour. You can't think about that one game where you like murk them, right? So I'm thinking as far as like an entire tournament goes, I think the deck is easy enough to play that it will get a lot of people excited, but it has some complexities to it. Like managing your chain links, managing your resources, I think it's definitely more difficult than Katsu, for sure. Because you actually care about what kind of chain links you're running, right? And that added benefit for Phoenix Flame is just very, very... It's just another resource you get, because you can grab the Phoenix Flame and pitch it. You don't have to play it. Like I think there's like a lot of nuances with this deck that can be explored. So I think that's interesting. As far as other ideas, I've seen like the Kadachi Rupture build. I've seen people go for like a low to the ground, like a lot more reds. You're running less blues. I don't think that'll do well into an ice meta. Like I just like old him will be a thing. Like old him will be places, and you just dodge Prism and you just win against. You have a winning matchup into so many decks that like why not, right? So I think that's a little bit. I think the Draconic line will probably be the most favored overall. However, I'm totally willing to be wrong. Like I'm totally happy being wrong. But as far as I can see it at the moment, those are kind of where I see it currently. Of course, we're recording this like before RTN even starts, right? RTN season. So like
ready to eat our words.
Right.
I'm told like I think Fai is very much tier 1.52. So he's not like I don't think he's at the same level as far as consistency, damage output, and flexibility. I don't think he's as good as Prism or Prism.
Briar.
Prism Briar. I probably shove like Bravo and Oldham in the 1.5 territory because their only bad matchup is Prism. Really, like realistically speaking, and maybe like the new kind of Dory with the new classic battle stuff is probably up there, and Lexi too. So I'd probably put them around there, maybe slightly lower on the scale for those 4 heroes. Like I'd put them near the end. However, that's not bad for a hero that just came out without any like major testing or tuning. I think that's not bad.
Yeah, it may very well be that Fai is a new tier 1 menace after Chain leaves. So
exactly, and that's a big hole, like the big shoes to fill. But like as far as you mentioned before, me trying to turn this to a chain deck, I mean, I wish, but Husk is still Husk, which I don't have. If I had Husk, then I think it'd be a tier 1 deck for sure. I have half a Husk, but I don't have 10 armor on demand. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the deck at the moment.
Okay. Oliver, do you want to go ahead and talk about Dromai?
Sure, I guess.
Why not?
Since I'm here.
Kind of have to, right?
Wait, how did you do? Make it look like
yes,
I'm holding you hostage.
At gunpoint. Tell us about Dromai right now.
This is all Yichin's idea. I'm forced to be here. Didn't want to actually do this. No. So
rude.
Rude.
So I played Dromai, and that's it. No, sorry. So I played Dromai. I played against Eric's Fai. I played against Rob's Iyslander and Yichin's Oldhim. The strategy I went into each of the matchups is just go wide, because one Phantasm on one of my dragons is just kind of ends my turn and just spells death. So if they try to Phantasm one of my Ash Wings, it's a little bit more reasonable. So what I was focusing on was a lot of Ash generation with all the Sweeping Blows and all the Rake Embers, and then converting everything with Building Mirage and Rake Embers, etc. The dragons were just going to be backup. It kind of worked into Fai, but not really, because he was able to get that big advantage on hits and on stuff. It worked into Iyslander because unfortunately Rob wasn't running Singed, and then against Oldhim, he just had too many you had too many pop precision. So Ghostly Touch never actually got to do what it was meant to do.
Ghostly Touch never touched me.
Yeah, it never touched. Yeah, unfortunately. So looking back at the deck now, I think Energy Potion kind of underperformed. I was expecting to play the bigger dragons more often, but since they're only one-ofs and you can't really time your Energy Potions with when you need the 6 resources for Dracona Optimi and stuff, and Tomotai, so they didn't really work out the way I wanted to. I think the yellow Sweeping Blows was a little bit extra. There was plenty of Ash generation. If you keep pitching red and then pitch another red into Furnace, then that's plenty of Ash already. And obviously the Fable did what the Fable did, and you don't need it.
Okay.
It lost me the game in one of the
because it does a block
matches.
kind of thing.
Yeah, because it does a block.
Yeah.
So,
but
I'm going to interrupt you here, Oliver, because you did tell me that you thought this was playable. Do you still think it's playable, or do you still think it's good?
Do I need to go buy it? Do I need to buy it, Oliver?
I think it's playable, but I don't think you need it. It's just social flair.
Okay, so it's only playable by virtue of being bling.
Yes.
Okay.
Would you run the cold foil or rainbow foil in the deck?
Run the cold foil. Signed by Steve Argyle.
Always.
I'm just double checking. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
Sign in what
Shopwood.
color?
Unsleeve it,
sign?
riffle shop it a little bit, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, you gotta teach it a lesson.
Get some character.
Yeah. Another card that underperformed was Dust Up. I realized after playing that I didn't really have a lot of 0 go again red cards to start my chain, and I put Dust Up in there because it was just extra Ash generation on hit, and yeah, looking back at the deck now, there's literally no 0 cost red go agains, so I had to change the deck a little bit, and that's why you see Burn the Malls in the current deck list that Rob has up. As for the sideboard, Erase Face was okay.
Erase faces. Yeah, erase faces. That did what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, Thaw was okay. I think you're a little bit favored into Iyslander, so I'm not sure if it's still needed, but it's still a good popper.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's still discounted by the Blooded Drakai. You can obviously run CNCs instead if you want to. Other than that, for the dragons, I never got to cast Dracona Optimi, and I'm thinking about taking it out because 6 resources is a little bit too much. Tumultai, yeah, Tumultai is getting there. But I think I'm gonna keep it in for now. And then Dominia, I don't think I was able to cast at all.
I see.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
any other dragons that you cut?
I cut Necria because 3 was expensive, and I never really added in Vincerakai in the first place. So, I mean, you saw me cut Necria on the first pass through. So, but yeah. Other than that, yeah, I got to generate a lot of Ash Wings, and I got to build up a board against Rob, as you guys saw. And that's like the dream scenario
Felt bad.
Yeah.
where they couldn't
Imagine if you're running Burn Them All, you just slap one of them down and just
start going to town.
Pretty sure you win on the spot because you just like ping with like 10 dragons or something.
No, it
once per
only
turn.
happens one time. It triggers one time.
Yeah.
Oh right,
Okay.
it's once per turn. That wording is really really poor. I think they could have worded that better because to me when I first read that I thought it was like once per turn, each dragon would be popping 1 arcane per, and I'm like that's pretty good.
I wish it was that way, but no,
So
it's more balanced than
one
that.
turn. So you're just running it for the 0 go again, right?
Yeah, 0 go again, blocks 3.
Yeah. And
You know,
also,
kind of like what Whispers did.
yeah, also if it gets like 3 pings off, which is very reasonable, it's already kind of on rate for a lot of like arcane damage cards. So if you look at it in a way that if you can consistently get the ping off on the turns it's out, it does build up value over time that is worth a card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That makes
and
sense. I was just curious.
Yeah, with the number of reds you run, you can probably keep it around for like 5 to 6 turns pretty easily. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah.
What do you think about what do you think about other matchups that you're maybe not worried about, but what do you think about other matchups like Lexi, like Bravo, like I don't know, maybe not Prism because I think we've already talked about Prism.
Briar, I guess.
Yeah, Briar.
Yeah, we talked about Briar a little bit before. Force Nature. I think you're very unfavored. Still unfavored because they have. I played against Alan. It's in a video that's coming up, but I got my Ghostly Touch to 19, 20 counters, and I swung at him with a Semblance or with Ghostly Touch and then Semblanced it, and I only dealt 6 damage. So.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not
You
sure
only
what
dealt
happens
6 damage on an 18, so he just blocked out, I guess.
on a 19 damage swing. Yep.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
it's not I think the deck still has ways to improve. But the way it is now, you'll be struggling against the decks that have
Poppers.
plenty of poppers, which is just Bravo.
Oldhim,
you might be able to pull through because they have a little bit of ice cards. They did get Autumn Touch again, but
Yeah, they got Autumn Touch back, which is like, oh man,
Yeah.
it sucks. Sucks for everyone not on Oldhim.
yeah, but they have less poppers than Bravo, so might have a better chance against Oldhim. And that's also why I added burn them all, because it just chips damage if they don't want to block the arcane.
Yeah. So it reminds me of Gateway, Dimensional Gateway. Crossroads? No, I'm thinking about Crossroads, sorry. Dimensional Crossroads.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that card.
Yeah.
Kinda. Not like ish. Like it was a con if you can just block up and just ping, right? But
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of that, but that makes sense.
As for Lexi, they have Endless Arrow, which kills every single dragon.
Endless Arrow. Oh yeah, I guess it does.
Just come
Yeah,
back.
and then just it comes
Oh
back.
my! Oh, that's so brutal. Imagine they run like rapid fire for some odd reason.
For some odd reason.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So
Just bam, 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 bam. Machine
Yeah,
gun
you
feel like
literally
unless-
just like
arrows.
enjoy
Literally
all
endless.
Yeah, literally endless.
yeah, but I feel Alexia is a little bit unfavored for you. So
That's fair.
Prism, I feel, is also unfavored because you don't really have any way to come back from a Phantasm, and they should be running at least 6 now,
Yeah, poppers.
guaranteed.
Yeah, because they don't have to run a movable anymore, so they could just slot in whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Against
what you're telling me is she's not good into the meta.
she is not. No.
Just in general. Sounds like it's not.
Yeah. Against Dorinthia, I was able to play against Shin 2 games, 1-1. I did the Ashwing spam, but he got 5 counters on his Dawnblade at one point.
Yeah, but he's spending all that time farming. He's not,
Yeah.
advancing objectives, right? So it's okay.
Yep,
It's like
that's
Dota.
true. Yeah, so
He's just in the
I was-
jungle, but then he comes out and he wins because nobody's ever seen him. He's
Level
hyperbolic,
25
everyone.
Dorinthi with 15 counters on your Dawnblade just one-shots you.
Yeah.
Stack
Yep.
ages.
So
fair
Dorinthia is also not very favored because she just keeps her counters and is just so hard to get off. As soon as she tries going face and you can't really block out all the damage that's going through, you're kind of screwed.
Mm.
Man, you're making me psyched to play this deck.
Yeah. But the deck is fun. I really enjoy
Yeah,
playing
I
it.
actually really
I'm
do
not-
want to play it.
Yeah.
I want to
Very
say,
interested.
I'm interested in seeing if a different playstyle of Dromai can do well, because it seems like a lot of the issues with many of these decks come from the fact that you are trying to get out dragons every turn. And so, like with Indori's case, right, if you have a turn where you just like don't have dragons, just like block out, you can kind of control where your counters are, right? You can kind of control her counter ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other ways I might try and build the deck is I was talking to Ian from Ian TCG in the Netherlands. He was running some sort of belittle aggro package with snatches and Ravenous Rabbles and stuff. There's a
really
chance
red
you
line
might.
level build.
Sorry.
Like a really red line based build.
Yeah. Just
spam it.
aggro,
Yeah.
and then you can throw in Transmogrifiers if you want to. Maybe some Phoenix Flames, Flame Call Awakenings, etc. So there's a way to build her aggro, but she still suffers maybe from not being very threatening.
Yeah, a lot of those on hits are not that great either. Like they give you more cards, but it's just damage at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I could see like that version of Dromai being a thing that people play, but I feel like it's just gonna be a worse Briar.
So here's a good question for you. You said you played 2 games against Shin. Did he ever wreck you with Kaloria, where he let you steal a copper instead of you drawing a card?
No.
Okay. So
funny.
in case
Oh,
you guys
yeah.
don't know, there's a small interaction where Kaloria forces you to take an item instead of drawing a card if they have an item.
Right.
And so Dory usually has a couple coppers from Spoils of War. So instead of drawing a card with Kaloria, you are forced to take a copper and get no value out of her.
If you can take enough coppers, you can get a card eventually.
You run cash in
If
just
you
for
run
the
cash
Dory
in.
matchup.
Yeah.
And then Kylo just sits there to be like Steelblade father, and you just like listening and just like, oh, counter for me, counter for me, counter for me.
Kylo Ren just like
Oh.
pickpocketing the opponent, just taking one
Yeah.
copper at a time.
Interesting.
It's great.
Yeah. So that's Dromai.
All right, Rob, show us the money. Show us what you've been working
Show
on.
us Iyslander.
I'll show
My
you at
most
least an
hyped hero.
improved version of Iyslander.
I think it's improved.
Definitely improved. So the games I played was against Fai, I played against Dromai, and I believe it was Lexi. The match against Fai was okay. The deck wasn't tuned at all, so I was basically going a very like controlling strategy and just dealing chip damage here and there, and then giving as many frostbites as I could on Fai's turn. Game was, I guess, a little close, but I didn't really have a way to finish the game. I think once I got on the back foot, it was over.
You almost finished it. You probably would have won with your combo.
Yeah, that combo was completely miscalculated anyway. I wouldn't have gone
definitely
for
wasn't
it.
lethal.
Yeah, it wasn't lethal,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and I did that knowing that you probably did have game if I got a bit unlucky, which luckily you didn't, but you still killed me the turn
Yeah.
after. So that was a bit of a fail, but it was close, as you said. The Dromai
close.
game, I would consider a fail because I didn't side correctly at all into the Dromai matchup. I had no way of dealing with the Ashwings. They just kind of kept piling on. a lot of my cards like couldn't actually even target like dragons. So like I couldn't deal with the big ones sometimes, which kind of sucked. But the Ashwins were the main problem. So I've decided now accordingly. So in general, I think my strategy was a bit incorrect going into the deck building because I assumed she was more of a control hero. Because you assume like all the ice, all the blue, she's going to be good at blocking arcane. She'll be good at, disrupting and surviving. But because of her lower health total and lack of armor starting the game out, I don't think she can be considered a control hero. And so I took a lot of cards out that were initially not very good. Some of them, so one of them was Brain Freeze. I never played the card. I don't think it was really worth playing on my turn, that one card, just to take a card away from the opponent's turn. And I had to fuse with it, so it was a little expensive, quote unquote expensive, and didn't really have much value. So I took them out. So I ended up initially starting the deck out with 6 Cold Snaps, the 3 blues and 3 reds, but the reds underperformed like crazy. You never really want to Arsenal a red card in Iyslander. You always want to be able to play blues from Arsenal and then give the frostbites. So even though the Cold Snap was not bad because it does freeze the Arsenal and it does allow or prevents the opponent from having a 5-card hand on you, it was never the right play as Iyslander. So I took out the 3 red Cold Snaps. I had higher expectations for the Insidious Chill, but that's, as I said, it's more of a control card. It gives you value over time, but it's way too slow, I think. It's not really... I just cut them all out. I don't think it was really worth running. Even though they are blue ice cards, that they only block for 2, and they cost a bit too much. So those were removed. The Frost Hexes underperformed a bit, but that's only because I built the deck in a way that wasn't that geared to creating Frostbites. Because there were a lot of cards, or there are a few cards at least, that give you really good frostbite value, like I believe it is trying to find the name, the one that gives 0 for 3 frostbites for 0.
Arctic Incarceration.
Incarceration, that's the one. Yeah, the red one, which I undervalued. I think it's actually a pretty good card. That one wasn't in the deck, so I didn't really get much value out of Frost Hex. And just cards that generate frostbites, I didn't really have that many of. So now that I rebuilt the deck, I focused more on the frostbite generation to make Frost Hex a little better. I also focused more on my finishers. So even though I did have a finisher in the deck, or I guess a few, they weren't as focused. So one of them being the freezing point, or I guess encase into freezing point, like freeze all the armor, freeze the hero, and then go into freezing point with the Stormstriders. It wasn't as focused. So the new iteration of the deck has better finishers, has a lot more frostbite generation in order to make Frost Hex better, and it's more focused in the sense that I'm not running these red cards that just don't really do much in the case of Cold Snap and Brain Freeze. So let's talk about some of the cards I did add. So I added, first of all, the 3 red Arctic Incarcerations. I think it's a great card, and a card that I would definitely play on my own turn. Plus it pairs also into the Freezing Point if I want to give 3 Frostbites, and then Stormstrider's Freezing Point on my opponent's turn. It's quite good. I added 2 Eisenhowl Weather Vanes. So another card that gives 4 Frostbites, and it has Go Again. So not too bad. The Sigil of Permafrost is another one that I undervalued earlier on, but the 4 block is pretty good into a lot of aggro matchups with on-hit effects. Plus, it gives you more Frostbites to work with on your Freezing Point turn, if you want a Freezing Point on your opponent's turn. Into the Dromai matchup, we have Icy Encounters, the poppers, ice cards that pop, and of course the Singe to be able to destroy 3 Ashwings in a single hit. So that's pretty much the main changes, I think. I definitely switched from more control to more of like a reactive deck, more active rather, I want to say. Setting some stuff up, setting up some combos, and being able to deal a lot more damage. Because in the past I was kind of just like reacting to what the opponent was doing, giving 1 frostbite here or there, not really having an end goal in mind. So yeah, those are the main changes. I guess the deck did okay into Fai. So my initial hypothesis was that the deck is pretty good into aggro matchups, which I feel like it is, especially if you get more frostbite generation. You can kind of just shut off their turn completely. It definitely suffered into control. I mean, I haven't really tested this into Oldhim, but I would assume that because they have so much blue and so many ways to, like, just ignore what you're trying to do, it's a very tough matchup. Into that matchup, I'd probably run more reds, more ways to get over their threshold of damage prevention and try to get more damage in.
Yeah, actually want to think. Thinking about it, I think that the main issue with Iyslander is that you can't really prevent the first action. So for Guardians, right, usually their first action is just hit you for a billion. So I almost want to say, like, in those matches, maybe you want to play the aggressor with red cards and Frost Hex, where you use the Frostbite generation on their turn aggressively to ping them for extra damage. I don't know.
Right, and try to prevent their one big hit, maybe, if you can.
Yeah.
The ones that cost like 5 to 7, stuff like that, right? So yeah, I need to test more into Oldhim. I haven't tested a single game to Oldhim or really Control in general in that matter, but I'm kind of just picturing these issues would come up eventually. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think those are the main changes, and I think the reasoning that the deck didn't do as well as before is because it wasn't as focused and it had cards that I couldn't really use that well.
Is there any way that you can think of that this deck could beat Prism?
More poppers. No.
You just died Merciful. You literally kill yourself on Merciful.
It's true.
I can't.
Frostbites, okay. Pass.
It's true. I can't think of a way to beat Prism, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fine. Not all heroes can beat every hero, right?
Yeah, Prism, yeah, not being able to beat Prism that easily makes this deck automatically not tier 1 or anything like that. Because
at least until Prism rotates out, yeah.
Exactly.
Which is not that it's not that far out. Like, it's pretty reasonable to assume that within the next like 4 months or so, it's definitely possible to get 150-ish LL points. Like,
yeah, the only concern is like if aggro is enough to keep Prism down and she doesn't win that many RTNs. She is
now
here.
We need all those Oldhims out
Fai.
there to like snipe and gem and be like, give me the aggro, give me the aggro, give me the aggro,
and then die
like,
in top 8. Take the
to
false
Prism,
top
yeah.
8.
It's Oliver.
Yeah.
Oliver, honestly,
Absolutely.
just be like, Oliver's is gonna be like with like a broom, just sweeping the aggro players to like the Oldhim.
Yeah,
he's just gonna be cleaning up.
I am happy that.
That
Yeah, I am happy that I guess the more aggro representation you have in the meta, the better Iyslander will be. However, the more control there is, or the more like Prism/control there is, the worse she'll do. So it's kind of like you're keeping the aggro decks in check with this. So if there is a big shift, Iyslander will have her day in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The goal is like to have a field full of aggro, and then you play Iyslander, and then you just spike the whole tournament, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea. But I think, like, out of the heroes that LL'd out, like, the 3 best heroes were Starvoke, Chain, and Prism.
Yeah,
as
they
far
were
as
all
like representation, results, just everything. Those were the 3 heroes, right? Prism's still here, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
I think
Prism's
that spillover. I think that spillover is definitely going to be prevalent, and I think the issue with a lot of these new decks, other than Fai, is that Prism is just either a better version or it can beat them, which is Iyslander and Dromai, right? So I think Fai could do well, but Oldhim is a bit of a boogeyman. So I think it'll depend a lot on like if people can bring those fringe decks in, which Iyslander is definitely fringe at the moment.
Exactly.
As I think Wizard in general has always been a fringe deck, so I'm not really super surprised. I mean, having equipment that lets you play whatever you want on your opponent's turn and Striders is extremely powerful, and it's very, very difficult to balance. So I think when Wizard becomes mainstream, it'll be a little bit awkward. But for now, I think Iyslander is very much in the fringe category. I don't know.
She's fringe, but she's fun.
Probably like
I enjoyed playing her.
Probably down there with like Levia. And stuff.
Levia.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's right up my alley. I love Levia too. So
I think Reinhar's better. I think Reinhar's tier 2 actually. So
Yeah,
probably
I
with
don't
like
I don't want to say like she's super fringe, but because at the same time, right? We saw Iyslander do well in last season's Blitz meta using just like all the Tails cards. So I want to say like I feel like that Iyslander is being slept on, even though every top tier player or high level player that I've talked to either is concerned about Iyslander or wants to play her.
Right.
So I feel like she's gonna be the Lexi of the season, where she's there and people will play her and they're going to be diehards that do well with her. And she's going to be the one to root for it by default because everybody likes seeing
she's
her.
underdog.
She's the underdog of the set. Yeah, exactly.
I think my only issue is that, like, while you're right that she did well in Blitz, Prism wasn't in Blitz. Prism was super underrepresented in Blitz, right?
That's
and so
true.
probably one of her biggest nemesis is going to be flipped on her head. And I think every time I played Oldhim into Iyslander, it was either a draw or I ended up winning. So I think even without I think the crown thing might change a little things. Like Oldhim builds will definitely change without crown and blitz, but for CC wise, Oldhim is he got Autumn's touch back. He still has crown, so I feel like you are right. But if the majority of players are bringing those decks, I think she will, unless there's some build that I just don't know about, obviously. But I think she's not awful, but she definitely needs a lot of tuning into these builds.
For sure. So yeah, that's pretty much the deck.
Alrighty. Well, I guess that's all three of us. We do have deck techs coming out, I want to say in the next few days. Is that right?
Yeah. It should be like the next 2 days,
coming.
I think. Yeah.
All right. So if you guys are interested in playing our versions of Dromai, Fai, and Iyslander, feel free to take a look on our respective channels. Any last words you guys want to say before heading out?
This was fun. I like doing this. I think when the new set comes out, it's very, very interesting to like build a hero from scratch with no net decking. There is no net decking, right? And I think that
yeah. I was gonna say it's fun to make unapologetic mistakes early on.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing.
Like, try something, it fails you fall on your face flat, and then it's okay because you're trial and error.
It's all
just like speaking from
experience, yeah.
From experience there, but I think it's I think these heroes proved, at least from what I can see, LSS is doing a good job with power creep. As far as these heroes are not significant, these heroes are not just going to dominate the meta, I don't think. And I think that's like good on LSS.
It's a nice change of pace from the Starvo meta, where he just came out all right, he's immediately
he came out of nowhere, and then he LL'd just pretty much immediately.
He just came, see ya.
And it was just like crayon package delivered. But I think all of these heroes have a sufficient level of complexity with building and playing, which I like. I don't know
they all seem pretty fun to play too. So it's always good.
They're very fun. I like the set. I think it's a good set.
Oh yeah,
I really like opening.
One of my favorites so far.
Yeah,
for sure.
Oliver has voluntarily agreed to play more limited, so this is already a success in my eyes.
Wow, I won't believe it until I see it on the OK&Y podcast channel.
Oh, sounds like we're recording your point of view tomorrow, Oliver.
No, we're not. Not even close.
Okay, fine. All right, well, that's it for us. We'll see you guys later. And yeah, check out our deck techs on each of our channels. We'll have the links below.
Remember to like, comment, subscribe both channels. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that too. I never say that, but yes, that too.
I know, because Oliver doesn't care.
Yeah, that's true, but
all right.
You should do it if you like the content.
Yep. Alrighty.